Make it happen while you still got a chance. Make it happen, do a little
We have a very
dance.
special guest in the studio today. His name is Jason Moore of Midnight Oil Productions, and he's in the studio with us today. Jason's an incredible artist and content creator, graphic designer, illustrator, motion designer, but more than anything, he has a heart for the church and is a big advocate of using visual communication to enhance the gospel, the good news of Jesus. So a little bit of backstory. I know you're passionate about AI now. That hasn't always been the case because AI hasn't always been around.
Yes.
But back in the 90s, even with the church media reformation, I feel like I have to thank you because the work that you did in the 90s, in the early 2000s, really paved a way for me and other media professionals who wanted to give their gifts back to the church. You helped pave a way for a career path for me. So from the media reformation in the 90s, when we were first starting to install projector screens in worship spaces, right, to, let's say, the pandemic, you really found your groove with content creation, resourcing the church with creative visuals, some coaching and consultations, right? But then the pandemic happened, and suddenly your career shifted with the pandemic. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. Well, I was just one small cog in the whole machine when it came to helping the church sort of embrace technology. But my mantra for many years with my former ministry partner, Lynn Wilson, who was also on staff here at Ginghamsburg.
Good guy.
Yeah, we would often say, or Lynn would put it in a very Texan way, that we confused Jesus and the horse he rode in on in our lives. Meaning that whatever cultural context we came to know Jesus, that was often the one that we thought was the most holy. So not using technology and screens and, pipe organ is the only way to do it and, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So, for many years, we were kind of out on the edge trying to drag the church into the modern world. And again, not for the sake of technology, but for the sake of transformation. I'm really passionate about creating deep, meaningful, creative worship. And of course, when the pandemic hit, that had to look really, really different. And so part of the story was that I had a church that called me like the first week after the shutdown, so in March of 2020, panicked. He said, I had gone out to Denver to work with this church and do what I call secret worshiper consultation, which is sort of like secret shopping, but I don't buy anything. But I just give feedback from parking lot into the building, signage, website, all that kind of stuff. And really, I think we have to earn the second, third, and ongoing visits from people. They don't automatically come back. And so they had implemented a lot of the stuff that I had put in this report I had done for them. And the pastor said, they just shut down our church. We can't meet next week. What are we going to do? Will you watch our online worship and tell us what we can do to make it engaging for people who might be coming for the first time? Because we figure we're going to have a lot of those folks because it's almost hard to believe now, but we had, I think the initial shutdown was like 2 weeks, and it obviously extended beyond that where we weren't actually allowed to be in our buildings. Mm-hmm. So I watched his worship that Sunday. I took 2 pages worth of notes and shared all this feedback with him. And I said, his name is Jeremy. I said, Jeremy, every church needs this right now. Would you mind if I created a little article? I'll make you anonymous. And I want to just, give people some tips. So I wrote this little article up, and I only posted it on Facebook, but it went viral on Facebook, which was sort of interesting. I didn't even have it on a blog or anything. And it was like 5 ways to improve your stream before next Sunday. And then the following day, Methodists over in Pennsylvania called me and said, hey, we saw that article. Could you turn that into a webinar? And I'm like, I have popped into a webinar before, but I've never led one. Give me some time to explore whether I can do that. The next day, West Virginia called, Methodists in West Virginia. Hey, that article you wrote, can you do a training on that for us? And I'm like, I'm working on it. Give me a day. And then here in our own area, in West Ohio, they were like, hey, we heard you're developing a seminar. So basically what happened over the course of 5 days is 15 annual conferences all over the country reached out to me and said, we need you to help us figure out how do we do worship in a socially distanced way where we can't physically be together. And they all wanted it before Easter because we were only a couple weeks out from Easter at that time.
Yeah. But now online worship wasn't a new thing.
No,
by then.
no, it wasn't. But the difference between what we used to do and I think what we have to do today is to really create an experience where everyone feels like they're part of it. So the old days of online worship was basically, and some people unfortunately have reverted back to this, or some of the people that didn't start this way have moved to this. The way that it often looked was that we would welcome the room and we'd say hello to everybody and we'd wave at them and then we'd give a little nod to online. We'd look at the camera for just a second and say, hey, if you're watching at home today, thanks for coming. And that's basically the last time we'd talk to them, except maybe at the very end as we're giving the blessing as people are leaving, we might say, hey, thanks for watching at home. And when the pandemic hit, obviously there was nobody in the room. So we had to rewire our brains to think, how are we going to create an experience for people who are sitting in their living rooms experiencing this? And that first training I did was called Telling the Old Story in a New Time, and it was really all about socially distanced worship. But in the fall, I began to really get concerned about what would happen when we came back to the building, because it's going to be a whole lot easier for us to give our attention to the people that we can see and read facial expressions and smiles and all that. And so my concern was we're going to create basically spectators at home and participants in the room. And so how do we move beyond creating an experience where we're just broadcasting what we're doing and letting people watch it to creating an experience where people at home are worshiping? So I talk about this language shift away from watching worship to worshiping from home. From being a viewer to being a participant. And the only way people can really participate, which you guys are doing a great job with this, is to allow them to participate, allow them to reflect, share those reflections, allow them to share prayer requests, invite them to the offering, giving is an act of worship and all those things. So for the last 3 years, most of my work has really been focused on how do you create what I call both and experience for people both physically gathered and digitally. And I've probably done about, not an exaggeration, like 250 trainings on that for different organizations and denominations and all of that. And then in 2022, in February, I wrote a book on that topic. And I'm continuing to kind of carry that flag around and get people to think in that way.
It's like you said, Jason, it's really how do we engage everyone? And it's not, and you shared a story of a church you worked at where to encourage them to think about their online community, what does it look like to put face to it and put a name to it? And that's one of the things that we've found is we've started keeping track of the people who are joining us on Facebook from week to week. And we've built these connections and we've built these relationships. And one story that I shared with our staff is one of our chat hosts, she's built a relationship with one of our online worshipers. And a few months ago at a women's ministry event, this woman who no one has ever met in person showed up. And then I saw our host later that evening, and she was over the moon excited. And she said, oh my goodness, I met Stacy. And I was like, Stacy? She's like, Stacy from online. And it was that experience of we've built the bridge. And that's what it's really all about, because we are in this together. It's not, oh, you're the online community, you're over there. Right. But yet I think the way you said it before we hit record was referring to the online community as another seating section in your sanctuary. Yeah. Because you look to the left, you look to the right, but you also have to make eye contact with the online community. And I think that's so valuable. Right. And that congregation is here. The way I like to put it in sort of short terms is it's here and there and now and later. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that they're here physically gathered right now on Sunday. They're also gathered online. So it's here and there. It's now on Sunday and it's later, because somebody can encounter that message. They hit the right keyword and all of a sudden on YouTube, your sermon comes up that answers their very need. And now they're worshiping with you 3 months, a year, 5 years after you preach that sermon. And so I always just remind people that Paul's ministry was the same. It's here and there and now and later. Paul did hybrid ministry, believe it or not.
All throughout Acts, he's preaching to the people in person. They're physically gathered in the same space, and then he finds himself in prison. He begins to write these letters, and Paul constantly says in his writings, I long to be with you. I wish we were together. I'd prefer to deliver this message in person. But since we can't do that, hear these words. And so he was leading the church. He was preaching to the people. But that ministry he was doing, while it was initially for the time in which he lived, we read those same letters today and get so much from them. So they're both then and now. So it's our worship that we do. If we think about it in terms of how do we bring dignity and respect to everyone that participates, has to be here and there and now and later. It's not just what's happening in the room on Sunday, but it's there. It's from a hotel room for a business traveler. It's a vacation. It's someone that is at the nursing home. I even know churches that are working with prisons, streaming to prisons. So someone may be worshiping from a common area or a prison cell, and they're a part of it too. So I love the way you all have embraced the idea that there are no second-class citizens in our faith community, and we've got people right now in the room. We've got people right now online, and then we've got people who are later online, and almost all of our attention is on that first group right now in the room. And if we're not careful, we'll say things like, let's stand, let's sit. Do you think anybody in their living room is standing and sitting in that moment? They're probably not. And it's not much of a tweak to say, if you're here in our physical space, I'm going to invite you to stand at home. Find a posture that will allow you to fully participate. Or just to say, let's stand in body or in spirit. Because by saying that, you give a little indicator that I'm thinking about those of you at home. I hear people say all the time, the offering, the ushers are coming now with the offering plates. Is somebody going to show up at my front door with an offering plate? Because all of our instructions are room centric. So I think we want to think about here and there and now and later. What does it look like to say, hey, if you'd like to pray with someone today, if you're here in the room, you can write it down on that card you got when you came in. If you're worshiping with us online right now, you can put it in the chat or text it to this number. And if you're worshiping with us at a later time, you can drop your prayer request in an email and someone will pray for you or even reach out and pray with you this week. So to begin to think about how do we give instruction for the three ways that people participate and not allow one to just be the default.
I mean, I have a friend who he's told me multiple times he's watched our YouTube streams on Thursday nights when he's at work.
Yep.
And so for him to be sitting at his desk at 11 p.m. and hear good morning, it's kind of this weird juxtaposition.
I write about that in the book, just to be careful about temporal language. And even things like, boy, the weather is so great today, isn't it? It's really warm out there or whatever. And it's like, I'm watching this in January when there's icicles hanging off of my...
Unless you're experiencing it in VR, then we can control
that. There you go. In VR. Absolutely. And with AI, you can generate those icicles with a prompt.
That's right.
So that's great. But,
that's right.
But again, I think, really valuable insights in the way that we think about all those different ways.
Church it's nonlinear.
Right.
Church is nonlinear. It's an organic experience,
You can take a series that you love that was really good and edit it and release it. Let's stop thinking of them as series and think of them as seasons and episodes. A series, when you're watching streaming, like Stranger Things is a series, right? That's the whole show. But we call what we do here in church a series, but it lasts for 5 weeks. So what if we were to take that idea that the series becomes a season and then we release episodes, and those can be produced later. And all of these shows have a long delay from by the time Stranger Things finally rolls around, it's going to be Stranger Things the college years, because those kids are not going to be kids anymore. Right. And it just takes a while. So I always tell people, you can take your favorite series from last year and re-edit, curate it and re-release it as 5 episodes of a season that you call, the season of stewardship or, whatever. I mean, you'd have a better title than that, but to think of it in that way. So people can encounter you in all sorts of different ways.
What I hear you saying is that we can do a series and then take a year off to develop the next one and then come back for church year 2.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And I probably will not be allowed back in the building after Pastor Dennis hears all that.
If we can drive culture in that direction, I'm all for
there
it.
you
Man.
go.
I'm all for it.
Didn't try to break the mold. Innovation gonna be bold. Step by step, gonna take control. Gonna make it happen, gonna make it roll. Make it happen while you still got a chance. Make it happen, do a little dance. Come on, make it happen.